Have you ever thought that the people you are asked to vote for just don't quite cut it? Whether it's the local candidate or the leader of that person's party that is the oil to your water, people are tempted to either stay at home or they go to the poll, stand and ponder, and then pick the least undesirable, or just spoil their ballot. Greg Vezina has been there, and that's why he's here now. Today's guest at Exit 425.
In the main corridor of Exit 425.
Local politicians to connect with families.
What are some unique challenges?
Thanks very much, Steve, for having me.
Exit 425. It's where we live. Greg, wow, thanks for joining me here at Exit 425.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be on 425.
Why do you believe that none of the above direct democracy, which I may refer to as NOTA, is necessary?
Well, frankly, because our representative democracy is not representative anymore. And the people, the voters, and those that don't vote, which is now more people than do, really need to have a say. And that's really what's wrong. We don't get a say anymore. People get elected. They don't keep their promises. Worse, they do things that they promise not to do, and we can't do anything about it. And the electoral system in Canada and in Ontario, the first past the post system, it's given majorities away of 30%, 33, 34, 35% of the vote. So you got half the people voting, and then you got 35% of that. So 17, what is it? 15% of the vote decides how you're governed for 4 years, and no one else gets a say. That's really as simple as it gets.
So having none of the above on the ballot is that better than spoiling our ballots?
Well, there's two ways. There's actually two ways that none of the above operates. In some countries, it doesn't run candidates. It means no. And if it were to win, in most cases, it doesn't really make a difference, but it doesn't win, but they have to have a new election in some cases. In India, the Supreme Court made it mandatory. They said, look, people got to have a way to say no. And they had a system like we do in Ontario where you have to go and refuse your ballot, which gives up your fundamental right to cast a secret ballot and tell everybody I'm declining my ballot, because in Ontario you can decline your ballot. But the Supreme Court in India said, no, why should I give up my right to protest vote? And why should I have to spoil my ballot? Or why should I have to write in the stupid name? So we need the option on the ballot to say no. Now, in our case, because we can't get none of the above on the ballot as an option, to say no, we have to run candidates. So now we run candidates in ridings to try and get on the ballot.
So you are a legal party?
Yes, okay, yes. We started in 2014. I think we ran 8 candidates. Oh, God, my memory. I think we ran 28 in the next one, 42 in the next one. We're down to 13 in this one because, of course, it's the election in the middle of February, a snap election, violating the election law that Doug Ford and everybody else is supposed to obey. There's no reason for it other than it's Doug Ford trying to get reelected. And we'll get everybody when they're sleeping. It's cold. I hope everybody comes back to Florida and votes for you, Doug. But look, we don't need Doug Ford standing up for us against Donald Trump. We need Doug Ford to get out of the way and let the Prime Minister, whoever he is, she is, to deal with it, which is how it's done. Doug Ford and the other premiers marching off to Washington last week and spending God knows how much money just for a consultant who was Donald Trump Jr.'s friend. Doug Ford can't do anything with anybody without somebody getting taken care of somewhere, right? Look at the Greenbelt and so on and so on and so on. Where do you have to contribute $5,000 to buy tables at the premier's daughter's wedding party? I mean, where are we? Is this Marcos? Is this the Philippines? I mean, come on. Oh, that's right, Donald Trump. We're Americans. Doug Ford made us corrupt Americans just like Donald Trump. So, and he's trying to get out of the way of a criminal investigation for the criminal activity that took place in the Greenbelt scandal. And he's trying to get elected before 14 cabinet ministers get charged like they did in Grant Devine's conservative government in Saskatchewan, which is the reason that the PC party in Saskatchewan is now called the Saskatchewan Party.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no way that you can form the government, even if all the candidates that were running got elected somehow.
Well, actually, we could. We actually could.
Okay, go ahead.
The first thing we do is we pass a law to change our system, the same system as Switzerland, where Switzerland, they elect people, and then they go in and they do their thing, and then every year the people get the democracy ballot. And out comes a booklet, and it's got all the laws that they passed that the public has to ratify, yes or no. And then they also have 10 pages where the people can write down the things that they'd like a referendum on, the things that they'd like to vote on that the politicians won't let them. So in Switzerland, for example, for decades there's been a discussion about yes or no to a guaranteed annual income, and the politicians wouldn't vote. They wouldn't let a vote come because they didn't want the downfall from it. Finally, up it came, and it got on a ballot, and it got voted, and it lost. But the point is that the issue got resolved. There's a way to resolve public issues. We have nothing here. We don't have recall. We don't have any form of referendum. Mike Harris won a huge majority promising to keep his promises and to pass the citizens' referenda bill. I know I was there. I was one of his candidates. And he got elected. I helped draft the bill at committee at unanimous consent, and he wouldn't introduce it in the House. And it's on the none of the above website, NOTA.CA, and there's the bill. We could have had a referendum, Dougie, on how to deal with Donald Trump sooner than we had your election. So my point is that there's no tools of democracy. They do whatever they want, and then they stick their fingers in the nose and say, go ahead and defeat me. I'm going to call a February election. Like,
I'm just posting a video tonight exhorting people to get out and make sure that they vote, in 10 days. And part of it is saying, look, this is so stacked, it's going to be difficult for the Conservatives to lose. And between the date, I mean, imagine if, election day is like it was Friday or Saturday, right? There's not a chance that there's going to be a high turnout, lower than normal, which is getting pretty bad. And so those percentages you gave earlier are going to be even more ridiculous. And,
well, it's even worse because seniors vote. And they'll vote when it's 40 below. And seniors in seniors' homes vote at 95% because they don't have to go anywhere but down the hall. But if you're an 18-year-old, you're going to take your bike in the bike lanes, which are, well, thank God they're plowed in Toronto. So you can ride your bike down to the voting station, right? Because you can't use the sidewalks. They plowed the bike lanes, but not the sidewalks.
So, I mean, people aren't going to go, right? And they're going to decide that it was decided already. So why go out?
We did recommend, we issued a press release when the election was called, and we said in the ridings where there's a none of the above party, actually in any riding where it's a close race, where one party can beat the Conservatives, vote strategically. And I wrote a book and said strategic vote 30 years ago and said it was the worst thing you could do. And our political system is now so bad that I've reversed my policy on the worst thing you can do. You can't have a democracy unless you vote for someone you don't like, not as much as someone else you don't like more. And you're now not allowed to vote for someone you actually like. What a shit show. It's just a circus. The only difference in Canada really is, look, we're a multi-party system. We're not a two-party system like the United States. The small party candidates get arrested at the local school where they ask to go speak in a debate. It's an all candidates debate. Oh, I want to speak. The police are arresting you. You're in a trespass order. You're going to jail. Like, the only difference between Canada and Russia is we don't shoot our small party candidates here. They're pretty much the same. The dictator rules. Vote for the governing party. Come on.
And none of this really is constitutional. It's all
It's
elections and stuff, right? So,
yeah. You can't, look, we've been to court. You can't win. These judges are appointed by these people. They're not going to do something that helps a small party get a few votes. No way. I won't get to the Supreme Court. Oh, come on. Come on. I mean, people should just wake up and be honest with themselves. You don't matter and they don't care. Okay? Figure it out. Until you figure that out, you're wasting your time, sit on your couch, eat your bonbons, and watch what they're going to do to you. Because you're going to have no Medicare, no health care, no pension. You're going to have nothing. Except we're going to have tax cuts for the rich. And there's no difference between a liberal and a conservative. Well, there's a little bit of a difference. The liberals leave the cupboard bare. They twist in the wind like a weather vane, and wherever money tells them to go, they go. Whether it's a big union's got a little money and pressure them on one issue, or real money which pressures them on everything else. The conservatives, they take the cupboards, they take the plumbing, the wiring, they take the roof. They have the place declared unfit for habitation so it can be foreclosed on, and the developer gets it, and he tries to sell the most expensive unit back to the person who they took the house from in the first place. So, what's the difference? They're the same. Well, one is just a little more evil than the other. I remember progressive conservatives. I remember conservatism. I remember when you did the least cost, most beneficial option. So that's why we had mental hospitals and seniors' homes, public facilities, and guys like Mike Harris got elected and said, "Man, let's get the private sector in there. We'll do the 3P. Everybody, let's sell that 407, get the $3 billion. We'll balance our budget." Who cares about balancing the budget? Sell us out. And for what? For what we have now, this is what we got. This is the benefit of conservatives. They used to think you do the best thing economically. That meant it costs 3 times as much to throw people out on the street and then deal with the increased healthcare costs and the police costs and the jail costs and the social costs. And okay, so the cheaper thing to do is just feed, clothes, and house people. You can even buy their dope. It doesn't matter. But no, today's conservatives don't do that. No. They tell you, I was sent here by God, and it's my job to punish you, so you will welcome the kingdom of heaven. There's no economics in conservative philosophy today. They're a bunch of religious fanatics.
Well, Greg, maybe you could explain the subtle difference between direct democracy versus representative politics, given that politics is really the struggle for power.
Yeah. Well, representative democracy is supposed to be where you elect people to represent you. And direct democracy is where you do it yourself, because frankly, they won't. And then the example I gave earlier was the example of Switzerland, where you elect people and they go do the heavy lifting and they draft the bills and they do the arguing and then they come up with a piece of legislation and then you get to say yes or no. I don't know that we need to go that far, but we got to get somewhere from nowhere. And we went from representative democracy to what I call follow the leader to the slaughterhouse politics. So we don't know the people we elect anymore. They don't listen to us anyways. This all started really with Pierre Trudeau Sr. Junior, promised to undo all that. No more control of the PMO and 42 other things they promised for democracy, and they didn't do it. And Mike Harris was the same. He promised to keep his promises. He didn't keep his promises. The only ones he kept were ones where he beat up on little people, cut welfare rates, and cut taxes. Dalton McGuinty, I'll have a referendum on proportional representation. Yeah, you did all right. He raised the threshold to 60%. He told everybody we had to double the number of MPPs. It's the same thing happened in BC. They had 3 governments that lied to them about doing electoral reform, and finally they had a referendum on it, and electoral reform referendum and recall got 90%, and then the government got defeated because it took them so long to do it. It's about time. So, I don't know. I think that we're probably 2 or 3 elections away federally from real change. I really do. I think if we get one more conservative government, we'll have electoral reform immediately after. Because people are finally going to wake up to the fact that when you give someone a majority with 40% of the vote, that the country's not going to be governed better. It's going to be governed worse, period. So at least with a PR system, you don't govern with half. And, the liberals, I've been telling them for 40 years, 50 years, oh my God, you guys should do PR, because PR means you govern forever. You might make a deal with the left on this bill and the right on this bill, but there's no more standing there and screaming at each other about what's wrong. You stand there and give each other ideas about what's right, what we can do, when can we accomplish something. And that's finally the other thing that happened to our politics. It became mean-spirited. It became nothing but argumentative. It became worse. It became obstructionist. And the world has Newt Gingrich to thank for that. His attitude was, you can't let them pass a single bill. Well, if they get a single bill, someone might vote for them. And so that's what politics, our democracy, is all about. It's about crass, hardball politics. And I don't think the framers of the Constitution in Canada or the United States started out that way, and they didn't intend for it to end that way. We're not in the situation in the United States, which has become, instead of a tripartite system with checks and balances, with President Trump. I mean, he's telling the Supreme Court he's not going to obey the laws. On the other hand, in Canada, you have a prime minister or a premier gets a majority on 35% of the vote. And nobody can stop them because we have a notwithstanding clause. So where are you better off? Again, I say that the people need a say. We need a form of referendum and a form of recall. And interestingly enough, they've tried to implement 3 recall petitions in BC. And in 2 out of 3 of them, I think the MLA resigned before they could even finish the signatures, because they could see the train was coming. So I think the sword of Damocles today is held by an anchor chain from an ocean freighter. The sword of Damocles is supposed to be a thin strand of hair that might break at any time. And so, that's what I think we need. We need a say, and you're not going to get a say under our existing follow the leader, the slaughterhouse system.
And I mean, if we're going to change anything, that voice has to come from somewhere. And it'll be interesting to see who the leader is that steps up and says, look, at very least, we need to put some provision into the election system for what you're advocating, none of the above, and see what the message is that's coming from the people. And, I think there's a lot of people that right now would say, who am I going to vote for? I'm not fond of the government, but that's the only sign that I see out on snowbanks and lawns.
Not my riding. The only signs you see in my riding are mine. I put up 100, 3x4 foot signs in 3 days before the storm, the first storm, and there nobody signs up, nobody's. But I couldn't believe it.
Well, and that's almost worse than simply seeing the conservative signs in
Right.
our riding, because at least they're doing that effort, right? So they're so confident that they've got your seat, that or whoever the incumbent is, that they're not even trying.
And they won't show up at debates, and they won't take any questions. Dougie Ford ran out of the studio from the debates up in Northern Ontario. Oh, no, I got another appointment. What, Doug? You're taking a photo op with Vic Fideli's, mother and wife. Oh, God, please.
Well, and to be frank, people don't understand why our MPP, who I was promised interviews with quarterly back in the election last time, because he was too busy for that election, which puzzles me, because here we are remotely. We're going to take half an hour, 40 minutes to have this conversation, and then we can get it out there, right? But and apparently he's been to my door and left a brochure behind, but I've never been able to speak with him or ask questions. And so how many of the 105,000 people in Clarington, 150,000 in our riding, never get to actually speak to their MPP, even at the door? And
he wasn't at the door. Someone dropped the flyer off, right?
Well, he may have been at one of the doors down here, but yesterday he was canvassing for another MPP in Ajax.
That's right, because your vote doesn't count. He's getting reelected, and he's going to help somebody else.
Yep, and that's that's not the way it should be.
No,
I'm your MPP. I want to know what you're thinking, even if I know that I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Right? This is my opportunity to just clear the decks and come and talk, and that's what I'm looking for. And that doesn't happen. So.
Yeah, they don't want democracy. But if anybody would like to read, there's a good book on our website called Democracy-A, A Guide to Voter Action. We wrote it in 1993, 2 months before the election. We said the Conservatives would have less seats in the Bloc. The Bloc had 8. We said the Bloc would be Her Majesty's loyal opposition. They said we're crazy. We said the Reform would get screwed on the splits and get less than the Bloc. And everybody said, what are you smoking? Well, whatever it was pretty good because we were within 6 seats of the greatest prediction in an election in Canadian history, right? But what was most important about the book was there's a whole bunch of chapters about proportional representation, about referendum and how it works in the United States, and how the public are right 87.5% of the time. Okay, 75% of referendums are initiated by the public, only 25 by special interest. Of those by special interest, half of them are defeated every 10 years. So every decade, the American public, when you give them the say, are right 87.5% of the time. Can you imagine if we had that in Canada?
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So it really works, okay? It works one way if you do it the way they do it in Switzerland. It works the other way if you just let people initiate these things themselves from the bottom up, because that's what grassroots is. Enough people get behind an idea that it gets enough public support that the public wants to vote on it. So let us vote. Democracy, eh? Available on the website, NOTA.CA.
and I'll be highlighting that certainly on the video and anywhere else that I can promote that, and in the description for the audio podcast as well. So thank you very much for meeting me here at Exit 425. You and I could go on for hours here.
Oh, days. Yeah,
and I sure appreciate this effort that you're doing to get people engaged, if nothing else, right? To make them aware of what they're up against and to get them engaged. So thank you very much for doing that. And I'll get the message out. It'll be somewhere on Spotify and YouTube forever. And there will be segments of this on TikTok as well. So
cool, great.
That's awesome.
Thank you again for inviting me, and to the listener who suggested that you bring me on. I think that was the case. Did you have a listener, or you just figured it out yourself?
No, I looked at the parties on Elections Ontario on the app and saw that, and I thought, I need to talk to that guy.
Well, yeah, people see here on the TV the leaders. They don't say the 4 anymore, or the 3. They drop the number. Now they're just the leaders. Although CBC has changed. Everything in CBC is the major parties, and they're very, they're not misleading people, because, there's 25 registered parties accredited to run candidates in here. And most people never know that. 90% of people don't know that until they get to the ballot box. That's a great time to find out about a political party and what its policies. Oh, I heard your name. Anyway, thanks again for having me.
My pleasure. That's been awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening or watching to Exit 425. My name is Steve Ray. Please feel free to contact me at exit425-401@gmail.com, and check us out on Facebook, X, Threads, Substack, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Instagram.